Okay, sixth graders, we are back at it on page 76. In the last little section that we read, excuse the bell. In the last section that we read, Moonshadow and Windrider met a man who was having horseless carriage issues. I wonder if you guys caught on to what a horseless carriage might be. It's a car, but cars have just come out during this time period, and so they looked a lot different. But Windrider was able to have never worked with a car before, but able to stop and help this guy and fixed his car, and so the guy was really kind to them. But anyway, so we're going to pick up on page 76 on the second paragraph where it says, but not only. We're going to continue to learn about what Moonshadow's been doing while he's spending time in America and how he's doing. So, starting it off, it says, but not only did I have to learn the demon's language, I also had to learn how to measure time by 2 calendars. There was the demon's calendar, which was based on the movements of the sun, with its fixed number of days and months and its 7-day weeks. And there was the true time of our own home, with its calendar based on the movements of the moon, so that the first day of our new year changed with each year, as did many of our holidays. Then, too, our week was 10-day-longs. But above all, I wanted to learn Tang words so I could write Mother myself and be able to read her letters on my own. And there were a lot of letters, for she had begun to dictate twice a week to the school teacher. In her part of the letter, Grandmother had grumbled a bit about the expense, not that she begrudged us the extra letters, but their budget was a bit tight. But Mother, in her part of the letter, had argued that they now had twice as many loved ones to write to in the land of the Golden Mountain. Father had told them that we would tighten our belts a bit over here and try to send on some extra money to cover the mail expenses. In the meantime, we had done our best to match them letter for letter so they got their money's worth in return. Of course, in her next letter, Grandmother had wanted to know how come we could suddenly afford to pay for double the mail load. Grandmother became quiet, though, when I added my own lines to one of Father's letters. I wrote to them in late November of the demon year 1903. But because of the distances, it took 2 months, a month for our letter to reach them and a month for their letter to reach us, for their reply to reach us. That would have made it the first month of our year 4061, but early February of the demon's year 1904. Mother told us how proud she and Grandmother were. The school teacher himself had exclaimed over my handwriting and vocabulary, both of which I owed more to Lefty's private tutoring than to my teacher in the school. My mother added that she wished I were there to help her go through our box of Father's old letters, for there were now many passages she had forgotten over the years. I suddenly felt very guilty, for in all the excitement of slowly learning about Father and living in the demon land, I had not really had time to think about Mother. But now I remembered how it used to be, sitting on the edge of the rice field as she waded through the brown, clouded water. I remembered, too, how after the dinner dishes had been washed and dried, we would sit by the small hearth and look at the fire and think things that we ought to tell Father in our next letter. Or how we had come back from the schoolmaster. We would spread out one of Father's letters and pretend to read it to one another. Mother had always been good at that, for she would have had the school teacher repeat a section she was not sure of, despite the school teacher's grumbling. When she got home, she could almost recite the letter by heart. She must have done the same thing with the parts of the letter that I had written. "What's the matter, boy?" Father asked. But as much as I would have liked to, I found it impossible to tell him about my feelings, though I think he suspected. He pretended to become very severe with me. "Now don't you go getting a swelled head by what the school teacher says, boy." And Father set me to reading this letter out loud, helping me with the more difficult words. Then, after setting me to another lesson, Father went through a pile of old demon newspapers and magazines, and one of our friends had brought down from some demon house in which he was employed as a houseboy. Suddenly, Father waved the New York Herald magazine at me. It was a fairly recently one, dated January 17, 1904. I know the date because I still have it. One rich demon subscribed to the paper and had it shipped to him all the way across the country. It always boggled my mind to think of the great mountains and wide rivers which he had people bring the papers just for his reading pleasure. Father spread the magazine out before me. I saw a series of drawings of box-like contraption. Father pointed to the big letters beneath the picture. This means the demon flew. Flew? I said excitedly. That's what it says. A pair of demon brothers by the name of Wright flew in an aeroplane. Father's tongue rolled over the syllables. He pronounced the demon word again, as if delighted with the sheer sound of the full vowels. An aeroplane. Were they given the wings by the Dragon King? I asked. Father laughed. No, he tousled my hair affectionately. Not so they say. They repair bicycles. But what some demon did, I can do. His eyes had gone as deep as they had when he had spoken of learning to fly on that strange beach. The others were down on the second floor where our dining room kitchen doubled as a gaming room in the evenings, when the dishes had been cleared away. Only Uncle was not excited by the demon magazine. He folded his arms across his chest and pondered his next move at the Tang people's chess, which is slightly different from demon chess. For one thing, there is a river across the board. Finally, Uncle pushed a chariot forward and sat back for White Deer to make his move. It's probably just some fairy tale for children, Uncle said. You just haven't read it the right way. No, it's fact, Father insisted. You can't trust everything you read in the demon's papers, Uncle observed loftily. He was sitting in his special treasure, a chair which the founder of the company had built and carved from teakwood brought all the way from the Middle Kingdom. The head of the company always sat in that chair. Uncle treated his chair very much like a throne in which no one else was allowed to sit. When Uncle was settled into his chair, he did not so much speak as make proclamations, so we knew better than to argue with him at that time. I could not understand why Uncle took such a stubborn attitude against the fact that some demon had flown. Father went to the demon's library and read through all the newspapers gathered from around the country, and he copied the accounts of them. All of these Uncle refused to believe were true. But a few days later, we received our next sign. Melonhead was a laundryman in Oakland. He had gotten that name because he had gone completely bald in his younger days. He belonged to the same guild as we did, and often caught the ferry over to attend the guild meetings. He was an old friend of Uncle's, and usually dropped by our place for a snack after he and Uncle had gone to the meeting. Uncle was not feeling at his best that night. He had quarreled again with Black Dog. Over what? No one knew. But Black Dog had walked out in a huff. Uncle's mood was not helped by Melonhead's news. Over tea, he told us about some crazy demon, Baldwin, who put air into a big canvas bag and then floated up into the sky, where he was under the control of the winds. He had a special sausage-shaped canvas bag built for him, maybe about 30 feet long. It was covered with a giant net, which went down to his belly, from which a wooden frame was suspended. There were propellers and a motor in a frame, and they sent the bag lumbering through the air so he could guide his own flight. It was one of the pioneer dirigibles, but at that time we thought of it almost as a miracle. It was called the California Arrow, though Red Rabbit was a rocket compared to it. The real crazy thing was that the demon was testing it so that he could race it at a big fair held at one of the demon's inland cities and maybe win some money in a contest being held for flying machines. The demon then planned to take it all around the demon's land and charge people admission to see him fly. "Can you imagine flying and making money at it too?" I said wonderingly. "No, I can't, because it's too risky to fly. Better to stay on the ground and do something you know you can make money at." Uncle spoke in his sternest voice. "But supposing he does," Father said. "You're crazy. First you wanted to bring your wife and your boy over to this place to live, and now you want to fly like a bird. Next thing I know, you'll be collecting twigs for a nest." "And you have a mouth that runs on, old man," White Deer snapped. It was one of the few times I had ever seen him look angry. "You weren't supposed to talk like that." Uncle glanced first at me and then at Father guiltily. You were going to bring Mother over as well?" I asked. "The demons will let a merchant bring his wife over, but I have to be a partner in the store," Father said. "But then how did you bring me over?" I asked. "You came here as a merchant's son," Father said. "We got a paper saying that I was a partner in the store and owned $1,000 worth of property here, but that was only for the demons. I actually don't have a share in the store." "But you could bring Mother over with that piece of paper." Uncle cleared his throat. He did not like what he had to say. "Not while I'm head of this company. I'd go to the demons and tell them that the paper was a lie." "But if the demons knew that Father wasn't a real partner in the store, they might send me home as well," I said. "And maybe the demons would even send Father back home because he lied." "Yes, well," Uncle scratched uncomfortably at his ear and peered at the wall. "I'd rather you lose both of you than see you bring your poor mother over here. What kind of a place is this for her when we're afraid to set foot outside our own door?" "You used to tell me how no one would ever fly either," White Deer pointed out, "and yet the demons are." "And I bet the families of those demons are going hungry right now," Uncle declared smugly. "And all because of someone's crazy dream." Father was going to argue with Uncle some more, but White Deer shook his head. There was no use going on. "Come," Father said to me. "It's time for you to go to bed." We said goodnight to Melonhead and left. I kept quiet when we got to our room, but it was obvious from my face that I wanted to talk. Father sighed. "Well, out with it before you bust." "Were you really going to bring Mother over here?" "It's only a dream of ours, Shadow," Father said gently. "Before I left home, your mother and I secretly agreed to do it if it could be managed. But I'm more likely to fly again in this life than to bring your mother over here." "But perhaps you will fly," I said. "What better test of your dragonness than if you could fly in a soft-skinned body? And if you could do that hard task, Uncle would have to believe you were once a real dragon, and then he would respect you even more than he does, and he would do what you say, and then you could bring Mother over." "You talk too much, boy," Father laughed, but he looked thoughtful. He pulled the quilt up about my neck, and then he turned the gas down on our gas light. As I fell asleep, I could see him sitting on his mat, weighing the possibilities of what I had said. The next day, after we had had our morning rice, Uncle came over to Father. "Oh, my head." Uncle touched his fingers to his temples. "I drank too much wine last night." Father grunted. "Huh." He wet one finger and lifted an iron from the rack on the stove where it had been heating. He tested it by putting his finger next to the iron. The moisture on Father's finger evaporated, making a soft sizzling sound. So Father knew it was ready without any discomfort to himself. He looked up from the iron. "You stiff-necked old goat," Father said. "Why don't you apologize and be done with it?" Now, Uncle was a proud man, and it had probably taken him most of last evening and this morning just to work himself up to this point where he would make excuses for his actions. But you can never force him to admit he was wrong. Uncle pressed his lips tightly together and his eyebrows drew close together. What makes you think I was going to say I was sorry? Father spread a shirt out on the ironing board. I don't think when I'm around you. You do all the thinking for me. Well, someone has to. You can't be left on your own. A grown man your age playing with demon toys. You're a fool. A stupid, stupid fool. Especially for wanting to bring your wife and family over to this place. White Deer bent over and whispered in my ear. I could smell the soap on his hands. Don't think too badly of Uncle. He's angry at his son, and he grieves for him. But he holds all that anger and grief inside him. He's just taking those feelings out on the nearest person. But that still doesn't make it right. No, but neither would resenting Uncle's words. He doesn't mean them. He thinks your father's taken to flying the way that Lefty once was taken by gambling, and the way that Black Dog is owned by his opium pipe. In the meantime, the argument between father and uncle had reached the shouting point. Go away, old man! Go away before I hit you with this iron, father said. He turned away from Uncle and bent over the enamel bowl on the left side of the ironing board. He sucked his mouth full of water and then spat the water out forcefully in one large explosion so that the entire shirt was sprayed with water. It was some way Father held his teeth and lips that made the water spray like that. Father very calmly began to iron. Uncle snorted and stalked away. We're going to stop right there for today, and we will see how Uncle and Father might be repairing things hopefully soon.